The winding black ribbon of asphalt that carved its way up into the heart of the Cascade Mountains was usually my sanctuary. For 15 years, this 2-hour drive from the noise of Seattle to the silence of my lodge had been a ritual of shedding, of letting the pressures of the world fall away like autumn leaves. But tonight, the familiar path felt like a journey into the belly of my own failure. The year had been a professional massacre. 3 major real estate developments, projects I had nurtured from blueprint to near completion, had collapsed in a domino effect of bad luck, bad faith, and one deeply dishonest partner. My company, Blackthorn Properties, was on life support. Lawsuits loomed like vultures on a fence line. My reputation, once sterling, was tarnished. This 4-day Christmas break wasn't a luxury, it was a desperate necessity, a retreat to Eagle's Watch, the lodge my late wife Clara and I had built with our own hands, our shared dream made manifest in timber and stone. Every switchback brought a memory. Clara, her auburn hair catching the sun, pointing out where the living room windows should go to capture the sunrise. Me, younger and stronger, hefting logs with a foolish grin. We'd named it Eagle's Watch for the pair of bald eagles that nested in the towering Douglas fir overlooking the property. Clara said they were a sign of enduring strength. After I lost her to a swift and brutal pancreatic cancer 4 years ago, the lodge became my sole tether to that happiness, to her. It was more than a house. It was a reliquary for our love, my guarantee of peace. That guarantee shattered the moment my headlights swept across the gravel driveway. 2 unfamiliar vehicles were parked with an arrogant permanence next to my designated spot, a sleek black BMW X5 and a modest, sensible Toyota Camry. My heart stuttered. Through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of the great room, a warm, golden light spilled out, defying the deep December darkness. And carried on the thin, cold air was the unmistakable sound of music and laughter. Someone was in my house, having a party. I killed the engine, the sudden silence roaring in my ears. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to rationalize the scene. A break-in? But the house was pristine, no forced entry. The key lockbox, a heavy, combination-based unit bolted next to the reinforced front door, hung open, its small door swinging gently in the mountain breeze. Only one other person had that code. The knowledge was a cold, sharp needle in my heart. My son, Julian. The trust I had placed in him, the absolute faith, now felt like a betrayal so profound it left me breathless. I climbed out of the truck, the crunch of my boots on the gravel unnaturally loud. The heavy, custom-made oak door was slightly ajar, and as I approached, a wave of warm, fragrant air hit me, a mixture of mulled wine, roasting meat, and the cloying scent of a foreign perfume. The scent of invaders who had made themselves at home in my sanctuary. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The scene in my great room was one of domestic bliss that felt like a personal violation. 7 strangers were scattered around the space. 2 men and 2 women in their late 50s or early 60s sat on my leather Chesterfield sofas, glasses of red wine in hand. A younger man, perhaps in his early 20s, was fiddling with the sound system I'd personally calibrated. And near the floor-to-ceiling stone fireplace, a woman with a cascade of dark, glossy hair, maybe 30, was laughing at something. But my eyes were drawn to the mantelpiece. The large framed photograph of Clara and me, taken on our 10th anniversary at Cannon Beach, had been moved. In its place of honor was a generic store-bought ceramic reindeer. Rage, hot and immediate, flushed through me. Then I saw him. He was emerging from the kitchen, a triumphant smile on his face, carrying a bottle of my 25-year-old Macallan single malt. The bottle Clara had given me on our last wedding anniversary before she got sick. A celebration of a quarter-century together. I never opened it. It was a relic, a promise of a future we were robbed of. Julian, my son, standing in my living room after 22 months of absolute silence. The last time we'd spoken, it was a screaming match over his latest financial disaster, a failed, can't-miss tech startup that vaporized $50,000 of my money. He'd hurled accusations of me being controlling, of not believing in him before hanging up. I'd spent months calling, texting, emailing. Nothing. Not a word on his birthday. Not a response on the anniversary of his mother's death. The silence was a chasm I had finally, painfully accepted. Now, here he was, in the heart of my world, holding a piece of my soul in his hands like a party prop. Our eyes met across the room. His smile vanished, replaced by a flash of pure, unadulterated panic. It was there for only a second, a crack in his carefully constructed facade, but I saw it. The party chatter continued for a moment, oblivious, before it too died down as the guests noticed the frozen tableau. The silence stretched, taut, and dangerous. Then I watched the calculation happen in his eyes. The panic was shoved aside, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. His expression twisted into one of contempt. "Well, well," he said, his voice dripping with a venom I had never heard from him before. "What's a bottom feeder like you doing in my place?" The words didn't just hurt. They disoriented me. It felt like the floor had tilted. I actually took a step back, my hand reaching for the door jamb to steady myself. Bottom feeder. My own flesh and blood. The dark-haired woman moved to his side instantly, her body positioning itself defensively in front of him. "Julian, what's going on? Who is this man?" Her question, so casual, so sure that I was the interloper, made my stomach clench. How deep did the lies go? The older man, distinguished with a full head of silver hair and a kind, weathered face, stood up. "Julian, is there a problem?" "I have no idea who this crazy old man is. He must have gotten the wrong address. You need to leave before I call the police." Crazy old man. The second blow landed, even harder than the first. He was erasing me, denying my very existence in the home I built. "Julian," I managed, my voice a low rasp, "what in God's name are you doing here? How did you—" His eyes flashed again, a flicker of the boy I knew, but it was gone in an instant. "I don't know how you know my name, but that doesn't give you the right to break into my house." "Your house?" The whisper was torn from me. "That's right. This is family property, and you're trespassing. I suggest you leave before things get unpleasant." The dark-haired woman, his wife I presumed, nodded emphatically. "He's right, Julian. We should call the police." The silver-haired man, however, frowned. He had a thoughtful, intelligent face. "Julian, wait a moment." He gestured toward me. "How does this man know the security code? You said only family had access." The question asked with calm logic hung in the air. I saw Julian falter. He must have been watching the house," Julian stammered. "These remote areas, they attract all sorts of drifters." "But the alarm was armed when we arrived," the man countered, his voice still calm but firm. "You disarmed it yourself. How could he possibly have seen the code from out there?" He gestured toward the dark, snowy driveway. The flaw in Julian's story was glaring. Memorizing a 6-digit code from across a dark, snowy driveway was impossible. Julian's face flushed. "This is my family mountain lodge. I inherited it from my grandfather 2 years ago." The effect was instantaneous. The elegant woman's hand flew to her mouth. The silver-haired man's eyes widened, darting between Julian and me. Searching for the resemblance, he was now undeniable. A younger man, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke. "Wait, Thorne. That's your last name too, isn't it, Julian?" The shared surname was the final damning piece of evidence. Isabella's face went ashen. "Julian," she whispered, her voice trembling, is he really your father?" Julian's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The performance was over. The silver-haired man, whose name I would learn was Robert, spoke with a quiet authority that commanded the room. "Julian, if this man is lying, then calling the police will clear this up immediately." He looked at his wife. "Eleanor, call them." Isabella, her movements sharp with a confused anger, was already pulling out her phone. "I'm doing it right now." As she lifted the phone to her ear, I saw the last vestiges of Julian's bravado dissolve. The mask fell away completely, revealing the terrified, cornered boy beneath. The boy I had raised. The boy I had failed. While Isabella spoke to the 911 dispatcher, her voice tight and nervous, I stood my ground. The two officers arrived with a swift small-town efficiency. A stocky veteran cop with a world-weary face named Deputy Miller, and his younger, sharper-eyed partner, Deputy Chen. "The situation, ma'am?" Deputy Miller asked, his gaze sweeping the room. Isabella pointed a shaking finger at me. "This man broke into our house. He's harassing my husband and making insane claims that he owns this property." Julian found his voice again, the presence of authority figures seemingly giving him a second wind. "Officers, I've never seen this man before in my life. He's a stalker or a squatter or something. He just walked in." Deputy Miller turned his calm, assessing gaze at me. "Sir, your version of events?" "I'm Arthur Thorne. This is my primary residence. All my documentation is in the glove compartment of my truck. I just came from my lawyer's office in Seattle today. We were updating the file. It's all there." Deputy Chen nodded. "Let's take a look, Mr. Thorne." The walk to my truck was surreal. Behind me I could hear Julian's voice, desperate and wheedling, trying to paint me as a sophisticated con man, but I knew the truth that lay in that leather folder. I retrieved it and brought it back inside, placing it on the coffee table, pushing aside an empty champagne flute. Deputy Miller opened the folder and, under the beam of his flashlight, began to methodically examine the contents. The deed, the tax records dating back to 15 years, the insurance policies, the building permits with my and Clara's names, and the final inspection certificate. Each document was a nail in the coffin of Julian's lies. The room was utterly silent, the only sound the rustle of paper. Finally, Deputy Miller looked up, his expression grim. "These documents are all in order," he announced to the room. "They clearly show Arthur Thorne as the legal owner of this property. Son, do you want to explain why you're claiming ownership of a property that doesn't belong to you and why you filed a false report with us?" The collective gasp was audible. Robert and Eleanor looked horrified. Isabella took a physical step back from Julian, her hand going to her throat. The younger man, their son David, stared at Julian as if seeing a monster. "Julian," Isabella breathed, her voice cracking, is he really your father?" Julian's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "I can explain," he stammered, his face a ghastly white. "Making false claims of ownership and filing a false report are serious offenses," Deputy Chen stated, her voice cool and professional. Deputy Miller closed the folder and handed it back to me with a respectful nod. "Mr. Thorne, my apologies for the inconvenience. Your documentation is unequivocal." He then looked at the assembled group, his expression making it clear they were the intruders. "The question now is what you'd like to do about the situation, Mr. Thorne. It's your home." Every eye in the room was on me. The weight of the decision was immense. This was my son, the last living piece of Clara. But he was also the man who had called me a bottom feeder and a crazy old man in my own home, who had moved his mother's photograph, who had been living a lie so profound it took my breath away. Robert stepped forward, his face a mask of shame and apology. "Mr. Thorne, please, we are so terribly sorry. We had no idea. We never would have. Julian told us this was his family's retreat. He said he had inherited it." Eleanor nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We were even talking about investing in his new business venture, a substantial amount." "How substantial?" I asked, my voice low. $50,000, Robert said softly. The number hung in the air, suffocating. $50,000. These people, who seemed kind and honest, had been prepared to hand over their life savings to my son based on a fairy tale. Isabella found her voice, and it was thick with the betrayal that mirrored my own. "He told me you were dead, Arthur. He said you died in a car accident when he was in college. He said you were a difficult man, and that it was a relief." The new layer of the lie was so cruel, so calculated, it stole the air from my lungs. He hadn't just erased me. He had killed me off and painted me as a villain to win sympathy. I looked at Julian. He was staring at the floor, his shoulders slumped, the picture of defeated shame. But I knew this posture. It was the same one he used when he was 17 and crashed the car, when he was 25 and needed rent, when he was 30 and his credit card was maxed out. It was the posture that had always worked on me. I thought of Clara. her smile, her unwavering belief in doing the right thing no matter how hard. I heard her voice, faint as a whisper on the mountain wind. "Arthur, you have to let him fall, or he'll never learn to fly." I'd spent 34 years being his father. For the last 8, since Clara's diagnosis had made me soft, I had been his enabler. It was time to become his consequence. My hand went to my jacket pocket and pulled out my smartphone. The blue glow illuminated my determined face. "Let me show you all what I've really been paying for," I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. I opened my banking app. The login was swift. I pulled up the list of automated transfers and bill pays, each one a testament to my weakness. The luxury apartment in Bellevue, $3,200 a month, from my account. Isabella flinched as if struck. I scrolled. The lease payments on the BMW X5 out there, $910, also mine. I turned the phone toward Robert and Eleanor, letting them see the cold, hard evidence of my complicity in their deception. Health insurance, dental, vision, auto insurance, all under my corporate plan, all paid by me. "Dad, please," Julian whispered, his voice broken. "Not like this." 3 premium credit cards, I continued, my voice merciless. Total current balance, $18,422. All minimum payments automated from my account. Isabella was staring at Julian, her expression a maelstrom of hurt and fury. "You told me your consulting business covered all of it. You showed me spreadsheets." "The allowance," I read aloud, finding the recurring transfer. $2,000 sent on the first of every month for incidentals. I looked at Julian. Incidentals like maintaining the illusion of success, of independence? Robert looked physically ill. "We were going to give him $50,000, he repeated, as if trying to make the insanity of it compute. "The total annual support," I said, doing the mental math I had always avoided, "exceeds $85,000 for the past 8 years. The number landed with a deafening thud. Over $500,000. I had funded this entire charade. My finger moved to the screen. It was time. "Apartment autopay," I said, my voice firm. "Canceled." I tapped the screen. A confirmation chime sounded absurdly cheerful in the grim silence. "Car lease payment. Canceled. Credit card autopay. Canceled. Insurance policies. Terminated." With each electronic sound, Julian seemed to shrink. Each chime was the sound of a lock clicking shut, a door closing forever. I closed the app and put the phone away. The room was colder now. The fire had died down to embers. "That ends tonight," I said, my voice flat and final. "Pack your belongings, all of you. Get out of my house now." The finality in my tone brooked no argument. The officers, who had been watching the entire financial unraveling with stoic professionalism, suddenly shifted their stances, reinforcing my authority. The spell broke. The Thompson family moved into a frantic, shame-filled flurry of activity. Robert and Eleanor began gathering their things with quiet, efficient horror, avoiding looking at anyone. David packed sullenly, shooting daggers at Julian. Isabella was a whirlwind of furious motion, throwing her and Julian's clothes into a suitcase with violent, jerky movements. "Thank God we didn't transfer the money," I heard Robert murmur to Eleanor, his voice thick with relief. Isabella zipped her bag shut with a sound like a gunshot. "You've ruined everything," she hissed at Julian, her voice low and venomous. "My parents, they worked so hard for that. My mom took extra nursing shifts. My dad spent his retirement bonus. You're a monster." Julian stood frozen, a statue of despair. "Bella, please, I can fix this." "Fix it?" she laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "There's no fixing this, Julian. It's over. We're over." She shouldered her bag and walked out the door without a backward glance. Robert, Eleanor, and David followed, offering me a final mortified nod before disappearing into the night. Julian lingered, a ghost in the ruins of his own making. "Dad, please, I have nowhere to go." I looked at him, at the boy I'd taught to fish in the river behind this very house, at the man who had desecrated his mother's memory. The two images would never reconcile. "You should have thought of that before you called me a bottom feeder in my own home, before you lied to these good people, before you moved your mother's picture." His face crumpled, but I had already turned away, walking toward the fireplace. I picked up the cheap reindeer and placed it on the floor, then carefully, reverently hung the photograph of Clara and me back in its rightful place. I heard the sound of his footsteps, the soft click of the door closing, and then the roar of the BMW's engine as it sped away down the mountain. The silence that descended was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. I sank into my armchair, the one that Clara had always claimed for reading, and stared into the dying embers of the fire. The party debris surrounded me like the aftermath of a battle. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean. I had just exorcised my son from my life. I had kept my promise to Clara in the most painful way imaginable. I had let him fall. The weeks that followed were a strange, liminal period. The peace that I had fought for was mine, but it tasted of ashes. My phone became a barometer of Julian's descent. The messages started the day after Christmas. Day 1. "Dad, please, we need to talk." Day 3. "Isabella left me. She's staying with her parents. I'm at a motel." Day 7. "They repossessed the car. The apartment complex is evicting me." Day 10. "I'm staying in a hostel. Dad, please call me back." Day 14. "I got a job, loading trucks at a warehouse. It's brutal." Day 21. "I saw a lawyer. Isabella is filing for divorce. She won't even look at me." I read them all. I never replied. Each message was a stone dropped into the deep, still well of my resolve. I knew that to reach back was to undo everything. The hardest part of tough love wasn't the toughness. It was the love that made it so agonizingly difficult. One evening in late January, my phone rang from an unknown number. A part of me knew it was him. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. "Dad?" His voice was different. Thinner, rougher, stripped of its polished, entitled sheen. I said nothing. "Dad, I'm using a payphone. I'm living in a rented room above a garage. It's cold." I remained silent, letting the weight of his words hang between us. "The Thompsons, Robert won't take my calls. Eleanor told Isabella she's ashamed she ever let me into their family." He took a shaky breath. "I lost everything, Dad. Everything." "Did you?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Or did you just finally run out of things you could take?" The silence on his end was profound. I could hear the hum of the payphone line. "I'm sorry," he whispered. And for the first time, it didn't sound like a tactic. It sounded like a genuine, broken confession. "I'm so sorry for what I said, for what I did. I was terrified of being ordinary, of being a failure. I built this whole life out of lies because the truth was too small." I closed my eyes, picturing him standing in a phone booth in the freezing cold, the picture of desolation. "I know I don't deserve it," he continued, his voice cracking. "But is there any way at all we could start over?" I looked around my quiet lodge, at Clara's photograph, at the peace I had carved out of the chaos. I thought of the 8 years of enabled deception, of the $500,000, of the word bottom feeder that would be etched on my heart forever. "Julian," I said, my voice firm but not unkind, "for 34 years you were my father. For the last 8, I was your banker. I thought I was helping you, but I was crippling you. I can't do that anymore." You are standing on your own 2 feet for the first time in your adult life. It's hard. It's supposed to be hard. That's how you grow." "Dad, I interrupted gently. "This is your life now. You built it lie by lie. Now you have to live in the truth of it. You have to rebuild it, brick by brick, on your own." "So that's it?" he asked, and I could hear the tears in his voice. "We're just done?" "No," I said, "we're just different. I will always be your father, but I will never be your safety net again. You need to learn to build your own." I ended the call before he could respond. My hand was trembling as I set the phone down. I walked to the window and looked out at the snow-covered peaks, stark and beautiful in the moonlight. The eagles were circling their nest, preparing to settle for the night. They were enduring. They were strong. A sense of profound, unshakable peace settled over me. It was not a happy peace, not a joyful one. It was the peace of a storm that has finally passed, leaving a scarred but clean landscape behind. I had done the hardest thing a parent can ever do. I had loved my son enough to let him go, to let him face the consequences of his own choices. The legacy I would leave him would not be one of wealth or property. It would be the legacy of hard-won self-reliance. And in the quiet of the mountains, I knew with a certainty that went bone deep that it was the greatest inheritance I could ever give him. The story of that Christmas Eve was not just one of revenge, but of a painful, necessary liberation for us both. And that was a truth worth holding on to.